I've had to re-educate myself in that world and how to be that in that world. And being a sage in that world is actually an antithesis because you have to understand, like in AI, nobody knows where this is going right now. And so to be a pundit to say you know where it's going is you behaving in a complicated world, and this is way more complex than that.
Before we jump into today's conversation, I want to give you a little context. The episode begins in an unexpected place with cows, regenerative grazing, and soil health. This is not an episode about ranching, but that conversation does lead us into deeper matters. My guest, Ryan Martens, is exploring how AI might be used to amplify human flourishing. So as you listen, I invite you to stay with the unexpected turns. It's really a conversation about complexity, certainty, emergence, and practices that help us remain human in the midst of the big changes we are experiencing. Welcome back to Life from Within. I'm Kelly Dwyer, your host. Today we have Ryan Martens. Ryan is a serial entrepreneur in software services, SaaS, and AI, as well as Pledge 1%. Ryan was the founder and CTO of Rally Software, which was the first public B-Corp in 2013, which allowed it to use 111 funds or Pledge 1% funds to drive impact by creating citizen engineers with partners at Code for America and Engineers Without Borders. Ryan is currently growing an AI business and raising regenerative organic beef on private and public lands using virtual fences. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here, Kelly. Thanks.
So regenerative organic beef. What makes the beef regenerative?
It's not so much the beef, it's the way we treat and manage the soil that is what makes it, I think, regenerative fashion. By focusing on soil health, which means using animals to graze like bison used to graze, we can grow conceptually a second ranch on top of our ranch by being aware of how grass grows, how to encourage forbs and things like dung beetles to show up in your environment. You can radically change the health of the soil that then produces stronger, healthier forage that then creates animals that when you harvest their beef, you get a better product, both from a standpoint of what's in it, the fact that we don't use any fertilizers and we don't vaccinate our cattle in any way, especially things like wormers and such. We try to keep the animals healthy by keeping the soil super healthy. It's a closed loop regenerative cycle. They sometimes call it amp grazing, but it's adaptive management stuff. You use a lot of animals on a small area. And we do it for a very short time, and then we let the grass or the paddock rest. And so that creates a cycle where we don't eat the grass down to a place where it starts to minimize the amount of roots. We let the cows go in there in a fairly competitive situation, grab and go, and leave about 40% of the forage in a paddock when we move on.
Interesting. How long have you been doing this?
Well, my wife's family's been raising cows in Colorado since the 1880s. So she's got a pretty long history here. This is a new deal for me. You can think of it as a natural climate solution, right? Yeah. By using cows to graze like bison did, we can create healthier soils, which sequester more carbon, which create beef that are higher in protein and vitamins that make humans more healthy. It's a human flourishing story.
Okay, I love that. I also know, though, that the cow's burps and other things that come out the other end, that's methane. Isn't that right?
It is a methane component, and it's worse when you're eating things like corn. And so when you're grass-fed in a regenerative fashion, the amount of that is greatly decreased. And the ability of the soil, if you let the roots grow longer, which is what we encourage and how we get so much more grass growth than other people in our area, you get a higher ability of the soil to sequester carbon.
Okay, great. Thank you. To those of you who are listening or watching, this podcast is not all about cows, but it's really interesting. And I think it speaks greatly to what you're passionate about. It's not just the cows, but at writ large, passionate about healing the world and being eco-conscious. And by the way, I didn't realize Rally was the first public B Corp.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple things in there. One is I think business is a great force for good. That's certainly a B Corp concept and a concept around Pledge 1%. I think we've been lost in the last 40 years with the notion of shareholder primacy as the purpose of business. Eric Ries's new book, Incorruptible, hits this head on. Nobody really decided it. There's no laws or anything like that. It just basically became a habit and a practice. Milton Friedman could probably get credited for it, but he didn't really even try to do it. It just happened. It's stupid. The role of business, the role of anything on this planet has to be to increase the health of the planet and to help humans flourish. If you're not doing that, what are we here for? I spent some time after Rally doing some investments both in energy space and in climate space, and really came to the conclusion there's a lot of work to do in there, and it's a lot of fundamental new infrastructure. Those fundamental new infrastructure things take lots of money. The smallest cement plant on the planet that you can build costs $380 million. For a startup to get that funded, that's no easy deal. It's a much bigger system. And to me, what I could actually work on was natural climate solutions that use the complex nature of the way those biological systems run to actually make the place healthier, like it used to work.
Yeah.
So it's a really simple way to fix it is just mimic the way a biomimicry solution around here's a regenerative way. That regenerative way happens to be an answer in a complex system, which is what we live in. And we're going to find ourselves, as Kate Raworth, who wrote the book Donut Economics, talks about, we're going to find ourselves down these regenerative distributed paths more and more as ways to solve the more complex problems on the planet. So.
Yeah. Okay. In our prep conversation, you differentiated between complicated and complex. And there was, a personal journey for you tied to that. From your perspective, not asking Ryan as the sage, but Ryan as a human.
Oh, sure. Yep.
From your perspective, what's the difference between complicated and complex?
Well, let's make a distinction here too. In the complicated world, it's easy to be a sage because you can be technically adept at understanding the Newtonian physics that's operating in the world. And even the climate science thing is pretty easy to understand. And you can be an expert on how that system works. My dad's an engineer. I started working when I was 6, collecting papers and recycling things and then delivering papers and a whole bunch of stuff, and worked my way all the way through college and became an engineer. And in engineering school, I decided, well, civil was interesting, but computer science was much more interesting, and ended up getting most of my great grades in that. But in the civil project and civil program, you're basically taught to be a human calculator. You're given a problem and you're asked to solve to a single numeric answer. Complicated problems do that. They solve to single numeric answers. How big should the beam be? How much concrete do we need in this abutment to carry this bridge load? These things you can calculate out. I learned to become a human calculator. To make it worse, I got out of school, went into sales, and then I found product management in a small software company and decided to go back to school and get an MBA. Even more education in the world of complicated systems and people who think they know the answers to things, or you're taught that you're supposed to know the answers to things, and that, look, here's how business works. That's all great when the world is run by Newtonian physics. We, in the climate thing that we've just been talking about and the negative externalities that we've created over the last 150 years by running this system like a cancer, out of control on population, out of control on the way we use natural resources, out of control on the way that we put stuff into the environment, we've created a very complex system that's in a phase change right now. Here in Colorado, we got 22% of our snowpack this year.
Ooh, yeah.
22%.
Painful.
All of our water comes from the mountains. We don't have statewide water bans or water restrictions yet. The Colorado River is barely going to make it to a place where it runs the turbines at the Glen Canyon Dam this year. That river is basically disappearing, and we're not changing really any of our behaviors. That's a world that operates much less like Newtonian physics and much more like quantum physics. And that world is complex. You can't figure it out. There are patterns that the systems create, but you have to step back to sense those patterns. You have to run experiments to figure those things out. It's way more than figuring out, again, the size of a beam or how much concrete you need to make for an abutment. So I've had to re-educate myself in that world and how to be that in that world. And being a sage in that world is actually an antithesis, because you have to understand, like in AI, nobody knows where this is going right now. And so to be a pundit, to say you know where it's going is you behaving in a complicated world. And this is way more complex than that. We don't actually know why AI works. We know how it works as a stochastic prediction mechanism about what the next token should be, but we don't really understand what's going on.
You know, in our prep call, you also mentioned Hospicing Modernity by Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. And I really loved when she talked about how you don't really know what something's going to be like or how you're going to behave until you're actually in it. And so you talk about we don't have statewide water restrictions yet. The dam might not even be functional in short order, and we're not doing anything about it. And it occurs to me like she uses this visual of, well, you can't know how to be in it until you can swim in it. And you can't swim in it until it's hitting your bum, right? Until the flood is hitting your bum. And I think there's a lot of truth in that because intellectually we can understand that there are these threats out there.
Yes.
But here I am sitting inside of my house that still has air conditioning. It's still standing. It still protects me from these ferocious Colorado winds that we have. So it doesn't become real until it becomes real.
True. If you don't live in the moment and you're not actually present and sensing what's going on, if your brain is running in a way that perception that you have on the world is that of how you can control it and where it's going to go, but you don't have enough awareness to understand. Most people are talking about, well, we have enough rain in April to make up for this? No. We missed by so much. We haven't even had the right amount of rain in April to meet what is a normal April, let alone recover this 80% gap from the snowpack from the winter. But it's this perception that, oh, well, we can just catch up with it. No, this is a 25-year drought. This is a new normal, not a blip.
So, okay, so let's ground this a little bit. You're a very visionary systems thinker. One of the things that we have to let go of in order to midwife whatever's coming next is to let go of the certainty, let go of being committed to being a pundit. You yourself, like what was your relationship to certainty? Let's say you at Rally, founder, CEO, versus Ryan today. How has your relationship to certainty shifted?
I'd spent 5 years in engineering school and another 2 years in business school being taught all about certainty. And there was a right way to do things. When I started Rally, I'd been through YEO and kind of learned from mentors and peers in that system about what that would be like. And certainly was way out on my surfboard. I wouldn't really call myself an entrepreneur, neither would my father by any stretch of imagination. So I didn't have any models for it. The system wants you to give the answers to people so that we can feel confident about how we move forward. And I got to a place a few years in where somebody repeated in one of our planning sessions, Ryan said, and that's when I went kind of bonkers. And I was like, I never want to hear that again. And so I spent the next year working from the bottom up through the entire organization to create the long-term future vision that we use to go public on and engendering it in the entire staff. And that started with journaling exercises for everyone. Then it started with model building exercises for everyone using foam balls, paper, clips, cutout posters, where we all started to envision what it is that this all meant for us. And after a year's work of that, and that comes out of Peter Singe's book on the Fifth Discipline Field Book of creating a shared vision, I got out of that space. And then I've been trying to fight my way out over and over again. And I would say it's my son who really taught me, we like to say around a house, the child of my future self. Sometimes you get a child who does not believe there is a right way. He's a very creative person. And so trying to parent him with the way I got parented and trying to even talk to him about here's how you do X. He definitely taught me a lot about what it's like to be in a totally different universe than the one I was engineered in. So I would say he had as much to do with that as anyone in that cycle. So did taking a company public and getting thrashed around in the public markets. And so did a whole bunch of other pieces along that journey. But I'm going to give a lot of credit to him.
I love that. You have this expectation of what having a kid will be like. And then and then the kid comes out and you think, wait, I thought I was going to have more of an impact or more influence on this child. But they are their own people.
And he's been the same way. His kindergarten teacher gave him the same feedback as his college design teachers give him. It didn't follow the pattern I grew up under at all. It's a total gift. And it's helping me, I think, be able to be in a place where I'm much more present. I would say, in fact, I just did an NLP survey, neuro-linguistic programming survey that a friend of mine built, a guy named Jay Arthur here in Colorado. And my motivational NLP survey shifted from extremely future-oriented, extremely big picture, very lopsided is what you might describe it, to much more heading towards maybe some semblance of balance. I don't spend much time in the past, but at least I'm more in the present. And I think given the world that we're in and given the nature of this AI technology is a way better place to be than someone who thinks they know what's going on and has no hubris about we're all swimming in.
That's really interesting, the result of the survey. Ryan is very future oriented. Ryan is more balanced, which means you have more presence.
Yes, and I've worked really hard on that over the last 4 years to, I would say, become, as some people would describe, a more whole person, as opposed to lopsided on the engineering people would call left side of your brain, even though it's not the left side of your brain. It's woven throughout it. But I found myself after 5 years of retirement in a place that I thought was going to be great and wasn't. So decided to really get out of that place. I started working on really a creative practice that I hadn't had for a long time since I wasn't working. Not that regenerative grazing doesn't take a creative process, but I'm basically the CFO. My wife and our ranch manager build the grazing plans. They manage the system, the regenerative system. It wasn't a full-time job. It's also not really where my energy's at. I really love what we're doing, and I needed to find myself. So I went through Julia Cameron's Artist Way process. I've been using that religiously for now 2.5 or 3 years, starting every morning with morning pages and trying to connect to what's actually coming up in me and feeling. I just got back this morning from a Tai Chi class that is really all about the same goddamn thing and trying to embody that and teach you that so that it's in your body. I've been involved in an African singing club, which is not just singing, but involves definitely having to move your body, learn that. I did some marimba work, and all that's kind of gotten me to a place where I can start my day and I can figure out how I can flow through my day effectively. And that allows me to slide in things like I spent the morning 3.5 hours doing a coding session, vibe coding with Claude Code and working on 3 or 4 things at once. And it was awesome. I didn't quite finish it before I had to feed the dogs and get everybody going and go to Tai Chi. I like Daniel Siegel's concept of living a healthy plate. And that means, time inside, time with others, exercise time, sleep time, etc. And if I do that on a daily, at least weekly, but daily basis, every day is great. I don't worry so much about the future. I just worry about how I'm going to move through the day. I have to still do accounting and run our management team meetings with the help of our chief of staff and stuff. She does most of the, I would say, run the business, and I'm much more of just a team member of the first team.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I have the CEO title for lots of reasons right now. I don't think that'll be long-lived, but I like the ability to create, love the software development world. It's like my writing. It's my way of creating.
Yeah. I have a question. I'm going to interrupt you. You described African singing, daily morning pages, Tai Chi, and you can flow through your day. Have you noticed, do you feel, I'm going to use these words and they may or may not resonate with you, but do you feel like you're more aware of your intuition, or you're finding more synchronicities showing up in your life?
I would say the first thing we've kind of focused on, my wife's been going through a similar path as she's raising a foal horse. And she's been working on trying to get to the same place so that she can connect with the animal before they do any training. And that's a fairly novel concept in the world of horse training, but it's becoming more common. And so she's got some trainers that she works with who are much more about training her to communicate with the animals effectively and be present and sense her way into all that kind of stuff. And one of the women that we worked with and did some classes with is this woman out of New Zealand named Jane Pike and a woman named Suki Baxter. And it's all about sensibilities first. And that's real consistent with what Peter and others would say is you learn new skills that expands your sensibilities and awarenesses, which then changes your attitudes and beliefs, which then allows you to pick up new skills. And there goes the learning process that allows you to keep spiraling your way up the mountain, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say I feel more intuitive. Not every morning can I sense what the universe is trying to tell me, but I can sense a little bit about where I'm at and how to shape my day and what to be grateful for at the beginning of the day. So I'll be grateful all day. I don't know if that means synchronicity, but there's some crazy things have happened on this journey already that you couldn't have, or I couldn't have planned.
Would you share one with us?
Oh, sure. Yeah. John and I started this same kind of conversation a couple of years ago, and then started going to the Rocky Mountain AI users group. Then mostly they talk about tech, and which was great. It allowed us to kind of start getting up the learning curve on the tech and playing with it and making it kind of a weekly practice and experimenting with ChatGPT and Claude and all that fun stuff and kind of having many aha moments. But we're much more focused on how humans work with AI and trying to not automate things, but amplify the humans. If we're all going to bring our best humanness to this game, we've got to have to up our game. And if you up your game with AI and use AI to amplify it, you can kind of be a superhuman. There's some potential of solving nuclear fission. There's some potential of follow Musk on to living on the Mars and stuff like that. There are some really tough challenges that require almost Star Trek-like technology to actually make stuff to fix some of the things that we've been dealing with. And so we need people who've got to be amplified with this tech. And so we're all about how to use AI.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second so I can level set for people. You mentioned John. That's your co-founder with this new company, which is called Manifest AI.
And MNFST, there is already a full Manifest AI. We are our name will kind of change as we kind of figure this out, but we just go by MNFST.
MNFST.ai. That's where people can find you. So amplifying humans by using AI. Maybe this is a false statement I'm about to say, but perhaps you're making the assumption that before humans are interacting with the AI, they are doing the presencing, all the practices that help amplify themselves before they even interact with the AI, or no? What are you envisioning?
I can't assume that, but I would say that is a best practice. If you're not grounded in yourself before you engage in collaboration with a synthetic intelligence, the potential results are highly skewed towards you delivering slop because it's a probability machine. It'll put you in the middle of a normal distribution curve. So if you think you're going to do something novel or different, AI is pulling you into the center of a normal distribution curve based on content that was scraped from the internet, which is highly biased in comparison to the representation of humans on this planet to white men in Western society, as opposed to even dark men in southern part of the world, let alone women, let alone people of other varieties of genders, let alone people who have suffered from terrible diseases or are on spectrums, etc. So we are using a probability machine that's limited to a representation of a quarter of the planet. That would be kind of like regenerative grazing with letting your cows out there run around and eat all the best stuff down. And there's lots of problems with this. But AI is going to pull you back to the center. It's going to pull you back to what's known. It's going to pull you into a complicated answer. It's not going to let you run into the space of complexity very well. And it's definitely not going to understand your intent and your future intent and your intuition. And when you do try to push it out to an extreme to help you develop something novel, you have to work with it completely differently, or it's just going to pull you back.
What you describe, is it your intention then to help people use AI to create novel solutions?
Absolutely. That would be one of the potential great outcomes. And that's what I mean by amplifying embodied intelligence or human intelligence and being able to use this amazing synthetic intelligence to help us down that path, and especially to build the pieces. So what you're going to build and why and for whom is really a human question that you need to discover through lean startup kinds of processes, through validation kinds of processes, through discovery interviews. And then you need to be 10x difference than everybody else to give yourself any chance of breaking into existing markets as some little tiny little startup. So that's the world of how do you help yourself through that in a way with discipline, with intuition, with connected to creative intent, while increasing your agency and increasing your responsibility in that process. The first migration in the conscious leadership world is that of more responsibility. The next transition is that of letting go and surrender and understanding that you don't have any control. And so, yes, we want to do that. And we want to be able to help people benefit from the wisdom of others. And that's the other human intelligence of people who are around them. One of the stories I like to tell is, what's your best predictor of success in college once you've gotten in and your grades and your test scores are things of the past? It's your ability to form and run study groups. So what's your best indicator of success with AI? Your ability to form and run study groups that help you keep yourself going up this path where you understand how to amplify yourself with the creative intelligence of others. How can we do that at scale? How can we do that at scale for minorities and groups that are underrepresented and being, as we watch women's salaries decrease every 6 months for the last 2 years, how are we going to do that in a way that brings this all back to the center? How are we going to do this in a way that brings up the bottom part of the population, like the Nordic countries were able to do in the first industrial revolution and create some of the most standout societies in the late 20th and 21st century.
So a couple things came up as you were talking.
Yeah.
Doing it in community or with other people, that kind of reminded me a little bit of a lot of coaches run these masterminds, right? These mastermind groups, right? But when you think about how it might look, and I know you are running a few experiments as a company with different products, or I don't know what you call them.
Different communities and
different. Okay. I'm trying to visualize what it would be like to interact with one of your offerings in the way that it might help me pragmatically. Is this me interacting with like an interface that might look like a Claude or a ChatGPT, or is this something where it's more of an AI that's integrated into multiple systems that I have, and then it's synthesizing information and I'm interacting with the super agent or the brain that's connected to all these other systems that I have?
It's not any one of those, and it's all of those kind of all at the same time.
Oh, that makes it so clear, Ryan.
Yeah, we need to get to the place where most of the AI labs have started from the math and the learning machines and the scalar systems that we have, and they're doing research on how and why these things work, how to move them along in their tendency towards general intelligence. We're starting at the humans. So we have lots of interfaces. We have some skills interfaces that show up in Claude Code. We have stuff that runs on your watch. We have stuff that looks a lot like chatbots. We build an operating system that runs underneath these study groups and allows them to bubble up what's emerging for everybody so that people can sense into that much more effectively as to what the group's doing, and then be able to use that energy to take it where they need to. So we're trying to start at the human and the social practices that humans have, like how do I introduce myself to the group? How do I do reflections? Where do I ask stupid questions so that I don't have to look stupid to everybody else? What's everybody else asking? Are they thinking the same thing I'm thinking? Or is this a group that I belong to that I could trust? If this is a group that I trust, how can I make connections to people who are worried about the same thing I am in a much larger network? Those are the things we're working on.
The word belonging. Does the experience of belonging in a community, does that feeling happen before I'm interacting with an AI? Or is it something that's a result of the AI? How much of it is interacting with other humans?
I think it's all about interacting with other humans.
Yeah, I don't think AI could help me feel like I belong in any group.
But it could show you what other humans are asking in this study group that is a new emerging group, and you're trying to sense into, do I fit in this group or not? Am I way behind, or am I way ahead, or am I just way out somewhere else than everybody else? And as groups like that form, it takes a while to kind of build the container and to build safety. And you get the people who obviously want to talk versus the shy ones who are probably sensing a lot more than what the ones who are outwardly filling the air with their voice. How could you speed that up? How could you let people feel this is a Tai Chi group I want to be part of? This is a YO group that I would fit into, as opposed to having to try it on for 3 months, but then not be able to try on other groups. How could we help them into that? How could we give them a picture of a terrain map of the kinds of things that they're working on and how they're working through it? How can we help them?
So that's interesting. What's coming up for me, so you talked about, do I fit with this study group? Am I way ahead? Am I way behind? And just, I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit.
Sure.
If we create a group that we're everyone seems to fit really well, then in a sense, there could be a flattening of some of the learnings that come from friction that occurs with differences. So, and I'm thinking of
Sure.
like, when I'm in a group and someone is talking and maybe they're because we reveal ourselves in the way that we speak, our tone of voice, our body posture, all of that. We're revealing what our mindset is and what our triggers are and what our growth edges are. And as a person, like there are things that I'm working on, my growth edges, and sometimes it's very helpful for me to run up against something that triggers it,
No,
triggers
sure.
whatever I'm working on, right? And so I'm going to want to be relating with someone who's different enough from me that helps me progress along the growth edge that I have,
Great,
right?
great,
Because
great
it's like a
point.
mirror in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. A mentor-mentee relationship that switches on you, depending on context. So I think you're good to push back on that description we just had. I think probably the more important piece is that I feel safe.
Yes.
So that I can reveal myself.
Yes. Yes.
And so how do you get people to feel safe without really expert facilitation at every turn? How do you get through this? And we took a detour. I was telling you about Rocky Mountain AI Group, and we said we're more interested in how people use this stuff. We've got some ideas based on my background in agility, John's work in design thinking and lean startup, and how we could use this thing to be more generative, not just to automate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to him and said, we'd like to talk at the main RMI thing. And he said, well, there's this other subgroup. We've got 7 subgroups. They're really interested in how people use it. I was like, oh, really? Who's that? Oh, that's the Women in AI group.
Oh.
Okay, who runs that? So he introduced us.
Why is it only the women who are interested in how the humans survive? Oh, my Lord.
This is one of those. So we introduced ourselves to Susan and we talked to her on a Tuesday morning and her speaker cancels for that night. And so we did the Women in AI talk that night a year and a half ago, really bootstrapped on the fly. And that's taken us down a path towards understanding where women are in relationship to this technology, whether they're coming back into the workforce, whether they're entering the workforce for the first time, whether they're moving up in an existing organization, whether they're at a life decision place where they're potentially going to check out of the workforce and have children for a while and raise them. When women look at AI, there's a lot going on. It was like, holy cow, what we walked in and were just, kind of bowled over by the whole thing. Thank goodness they had a very structured program as to how they move through their meetups that really created a safe container for us to do what we were doing, but allowed them to really get set in the room and get present. And it was a very different agenda than I would imagine, but it really worked. And we ended up doing 4 more of these things, helping them create open space conferences. And then they helped us create a pop-up at the AnitaB.org Grace Hopper celebration in Chicago last summer, where we had over 1,000 women come in and write all over the walls about their hopes, their fears, their journeys with AI, what they're looking for, where they came from. It was awesome.
What were your takeaways that you then have started to incorporate into what you're building?
Well, one is that people can be entering in a lot of different places along the continuum, and you've got to make sure you meet them there before you start trying to do anything too crazy. You can't teach somebody AI in a course. The only way you can kind of teach them is to put them in cohort and actually have them do stuff. And for them to actually do stuff, they have to feel safe in that context. They have to feel heard. They have to feel gotten. They have to feel safe. And then when that all happens, they get the aha moments. And then when they get the aha moments, they go, oh, now I see what it is, AI, or at least I'm starting to see a picture of what it is and what it does and why it's so powerful. And then they go through the whole piece of, well, this really affects my kid and how they're going through school. And how do you process that stuff? Do you get extremely anxious and it comes into your shoulders? How do you work through that? How do you then take responsibility for that component? Are you going to set the AI practices for your young kids and how they adopt these things in a way that augments their learning? So how do you support that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a thread that's been sticking with me. Something that I think about a lot is our willingness and tolerance to live with paradox when multiple things are true at once. And I think that that is in direct opposition to the mind that wants the certainty, that's trying to demonstrate the certainty, because that leaves no room for paradox. And as a mom thinking about a child, my son, and how he's going to be interacting with AI and how it's going to impact his life, and oh my God, what kind of career is he going to be able to go into? Should we start a plumbing business like now?
You mean raising cows?
Right, right. Something in the real world that's not going to go away. Do you talk much about paradox in your groups or among your team, or has that ever kind of woven in to the conversation?
It does for the women in these contexts, for sure. But it's the other women who are at their table or in their cohort that provide that support and guidance. We just help create the containers and ways to try to amplify and scale this understanding. So in our organization, a bit, but I think we're all been through enough startups that we've been through the place of, you think you know what you're doing and you think you know who your customer is. That we're not delusional about we have a crystal ball.
I think for safety, you talk about safety a lot. And for me personally, I feel the safest when I'm in a group of people where I'm not being judged harshly.
Brene Brown has just nailed this to the wall with her braving concept around trust. And she talks obviously about boundaries and creating vaults. And the N in braving is non-judgmental.
For many people, I know I got my MBA, and the folks in the MBA program, their inner critic, like not the one that's beating themselves up, although that also might be true, but that gets applied. People who are very strong critical thinkers, there's another side to that sharp knife, right? There's two sides to the knife edge. So you had said in passing that you're raising money for your new venture.
Yes.
Earlier in our conversation, you talked about shareholder primacy. How are you raising money in a way that isn't old model, extractive, shareholder primacy, oh, you're not giving the returns, so you got to go do the layoffs, even though the company's still generating plenty of revenue?
Yep. Well, we had some ideas down this path as we started down this area, and we've actually started two businesses at once. But along that path, Eric Ries, who I'd spent time with in the past and was kind enough to do some interviews with when we were in 2011 or 2012, I got on his early release of his book, Incorruptible. And it is a blueprint for building businesses that are mission aligned, where the mission is around human flourishing and that the business generates cash in order to cause human flourishing to increase. So the metrics that drive the business create better business outcomes, but they also create better human outcomes, primarily human outcomes first. Business just fuels that growth and the ability to scale it. So one business we created is a public benefit corporation with a mission lock on it. The other one is a co-op. Okay. Where the members, they vote on, they're part of it, they contribute in it, and it allows them to imagine a group of people who are members steering what we just talked about, as opposed to them being the product in social media land or in commercial AI land, them controlling the product and it working for them.
And so raising money that comes from the members, the public benefit corp, how does that?
We're raising venture on one side and impact capital on the other.
Okay. All right.
And we're stitching them together with a couple other companies, one a purpose trust like Yvonne Chenard did with Patagonia as a way to lock mission, and then creating inter-company relationships that create, basically think of it as working agreements between these entities. The purpose trust holds a golden share to each of the other companies so that they cannot be bought, sold, or sent down a path corrupted by yeah. As Eric calls it, financial gravity.
Yes.
Think of it as bad shareholders, bad board members, bad owners who lose their brains halfway through the whole thing and get greedy and head back to the ego side of the whole thing. And yeah, we're doing a lot of very intentional stuff. And Eric says in the book, when are you supposed to do this? Well, first you need something kind of valuable, and then you need to do it early, because everybody will tell you, and that was the world of B-Corp and Pledge 1% and all that. You don't need to do that until you're getting close to IPO. I was like, well, why would we wait? Why wouldn't we start behaving that way from day one? Why wouldn't that be part of just how the whole thing runs? So, I mean, I was trying to do that early days with Rally. We've doubled down on how intentional we are with that in this context.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. And I look forward to seeing how it plays out. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything we haven't talked about that you feel would be useful to bring into the conversation right now?
So we went from regenerative grazing into AI to the role of business in society to conscious leadership. We were across a large terrain, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to hear what's the point of view that you would pull out of this, given the listenership that you have?
So my listeners, or at least this is what I believe who they are. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to get that information. So if you are listening and you want to reach out and so I can get to know you, that'd be great. We all hit inflection points where we lose our orientation and we feel less confident, less sure, right? Less sure of our direction or the next right conversation or the next action to take. And so I love interacting with people in that space and helping someone regain their orientation so that they have agency, because I think it restores our agency. It restores our self-trust. And then, they know what the right next action is, the right next conversation. There's no need to have someone tell them.
No need to be the sage. They have the answer. It's right in here.
The more we personally can engage in the practices that are going to keep us grounded, because even hearing you, the breadth of our conversation, what you're sharing about AI and what you're sharing about how you're trying to approach it, and then the 3 different frameworks or models we referenced earlier, it's all about emergence. And how do you manage yourself in the context of emergence? How do you stay present? How do you stay grounded? How do you stay with your agency? That's what interests me. I could talk about that stuff all day long.
What came out that was maybe new or novel or an interesting collision of 2 ideas that you hadn't collided before in this context?
That's a good question. What you said about the AI pulling us to the middle of the bell curve, and it becomes very hard to create something novel with it, right? Unless you're very intentional. That I'm thinking about. And wondering, because I use AI every day. So I guess I'm more curious, like how I might be able to interact with it in a way to produce greater novelty for myself or further my own thinking about my direction, let's say.
Yeah, not easy. We've spent a lot of time trying to push models and push behaviors. And it's not just about the model. It's about the model. It's about you, and it's about the collaboration. So you got to worry about all 3 of those settings. And the AI can do things to help you if you teach it that way or you set it up that way to get you grounded. You can use it as a coach to help you get to a place to sense, stop for a moment, take a breath, do a body scan. Is all the attention you've got yours? Or can you let go of some of that because it's not actually yours, that's coming from somebody else in the room? And that was the last meeting. I'm just going to shake that off like a horse would. You can get AI to kind of weave its way and sense its way with you in an inquiry mode as opposed to an answer bot mode.
I prefer doing that either away from technology, my computer, or doing that with another person.
Me too.
Or in a group with other people. I haven't found it to be super effective for me as a coach. Now, it's helped me clarify my thinking about certain things. Absolutely. Sure. So in that way, maybe it's functioning as a coach.
Yeah, that doesn't come out of the box doing this very well. To swing it into inquiry mode and co-sensing mode and to have it work with you in a coaching-like approach, you can take off some of the default behaviors and put in your own little agent scripts to make it do things like that. But it will drift back to the place of being I love the word sycophantic. It sounds it rhymes so well, right?
It's such a fan of me. I love it.
Oh my God. Oh, I got to keep going. This is pure juice, right? What are they doing? Unfortunately, they're doing the social media game, right? They're encouraging you to use it more.
Yes.
As opposed to, no, get up from the frickin' table, get outside, go get in a place where you can actually find the way into that problem from yourself, not from continued dialogue. So imagine an AI actually slapping you in the forehead and saying, you're tired, you're sloppy, let's stop.
Yeah, that's enough. And yet, Manifest, your company, is attempting to help people interact with AI in that way.
Yes, we're building a very different AI. We're building a human-centric AI with a very different set of default behaviors.
And so how do people get access to it?
There's no answer to that question yet. Okay. It's in 3 communities right now, and there's 2 or 3 other tools with 10 or so users on top of them. And we're continuing to evolve that stuff, as you'd imagine. There's a lot to come this year. Those things will drip out on our Substack environment, which is manifest.substack.com, and it'll drip out on our website. But right now we're in pretty closed beta systems because God, the amount of feedback is just tremendous, and how to keep it safe, how to keep it in a way that's helpful, and how to keep it in a way that builds confidence and agency and responsibility. We're charting new territory.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Appreciate your integrity, Ryan.
Trying hard.
Yes.
Trying hard.
You're making a good effort.
I appreciate you in this conversation.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
One of the things that Ryan said that I keep thinking about is how AI pulls us toward the middle of the bell curve, toward the average. So that means that if we want to be generative using AI, we have to bring more of our own groundedness, our own discernment, creativity, and humanity to the interaction. For me, that is the deepest challenge of this moment, to become and stay more present, more embodied, more connected to myself, to other humans in real life, and to connect more consciously to the living systems that we're all a part of. Not just so I can interact better with AI. Sure, yeah, great. But really, it's about staying sane in this world that feels so chaotic and changing so fast. Thank you for listening to Life from Within. Please share this conversation and subscribe and follow to receive future episodes.